Welcome to Breathe, a weekly audio podcast presented by Breath of Life. And now, here's the host, Pastor W. Snell, and co-host David Person.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person, the co-host of this podcast that is presented by the Breath of Life television ministry. And the host of the podcast is Pastor W. Snell. He is the speaker director of Breath of Life and the senior pastor of the Oakwood University Church. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. It's Monday. Glad to be here. Got some good stuff that we're going to talk about today. And so I'm on fleek, as the kids would say.
As they used to say.
As they used to say. Hey, I'm dating myself. I'm dating myself.
I don't think I've heard that one in a minute.
Yeah.
So, yes, as you alluded to, we are still very much in a social justice mode this month. And we want to talk today. We're going to have a conversation with someone who I think has been a leading advocate in North Alabama and actually even beyond North Alabama, throughout the state, on voting rights and related issues. Her name is Angela Curry, and I happen to know Angela very well. Angela is the executive director of United Women of Color, which is a civic engagement organization here in Huntsville. Angela, who's also a graduate of the University of Alabama, Huntsville, has received one of her many accolades, as she is the recipient of the 2021 UAH Alumni of Achievement Award for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. And she's also the recipient. Was this from UAH also? The Rosa Parks Catalyst for Change Award? Who gave you that?
The Rosa Parks Committee of Madison County.
I should have known that. Okay, duh. All right. She's also an alumnus of the inaugural class of the Women's Policy Institute, which is offered by the Women's Foundation of Alabama. And last year, 2022, Angela was one of 10 women in Alabama selected as an inaugural fellow to the Black Southern Women's Collaborative. That's a lot of stuff you got.
That's a lot. You're very accomplished. We have a very accomplished guest today.
And I don't even think that represents all. I think there's still stuff that is left to be said. So, Angela, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Anytime I get to share about civic engagement, I'm just honored and I'm humbled that you all have value what I have to say related to that.
Well,
so,
with what I just read, I don't know why you'd be surprised. So let's get into this conversation about voting rights and civic engagement. What has been well, first of all, let me start here. What's your current assessment of where things stand for us? I want to say in the state of Alabama, but you might even want to look beyond Alabama when it comes to voting rights.
we are sitting at a place where the campaign that wasn't talked about, the silent campaign of my vote doesn't matter, it doesn't do me any good to vote, is actually bearing a lot of fruit. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we're seeing the direct campaign, the outward campaign of restricting voting rights for the purpose of making it easier for people who believe in authoritarian type rule to have a path to victories across states and even across our nation. So as a citizenry, our apathy has produced some tyrants who want to just suppress us to as much as they can.
So I want to be careful here because we're not a partisan podcast. We are nonpartisan politically. But when you use the word tyrant, you know, there's certain specific individuals that come to mind. One is a former president, one is a current governor. But I also think, and to be clear, I'm not talking about the governor of this state with the word tyrant. I'm thinking about the governor of another state that we all know.
Where the weather's really nice.
Yeah, Pastor Snell knows that state pretty well.
Yeah, I do.
As do I.
Yeah.
That those are pretty strong words when you use the word tyrant.
They are.
Or that is a very strong word. Why that word? Tyrant, that suggests someone whose inclination is anti-democratic and authoritarian, which would be antithetical to everything that we've been taught, growing up, in this nation.
So in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s, before the Voting Rights Act was passed, which has been gutted, by the way, coming up on a 10-year anniversary, when we had to, as Black Americans and Americans of color in general, had to guess how many beans were in a glass to vote, that was tyrannical. And so now we're at a place where in our state, in Alabama, we're going to make people felons if House Bill 209 passes. If I pay my son gas money to take my absentee ballot to be mailed, he will be a felon and I will be a felon to cast a absentee ballot. We're saying that people who are disabled or who are in nursing homes and do not have immediate family who are willing to come and assist them with an absentee ballot will not be eligible to vote if House Bill 209 passes the Senate of the state of Alabama. It's already passed the House. That is tyrannical. When we're going to extreme measures, whoever that person is, whatever party they're affiliated with, to restrict the rights of people who are already marginalized, who are already at a disadvantage, when we go to restrict their rights further, that's not democratic. It's just clear to me. That's clear.
So you jumped in right into it, and that's kind of where, I was going to kind of, drive some of my questions. So you kind of addressed the issue of voter apathy. Does my vote even count? And I don't know. I think there are times where we kind of may aim that a little bit more and say that's a young people thing, but I don't know. Every age group, there are people in my peer circle that. There are people in responsible positions. I'm starting to hear that rhetoric, and it's stunning to my ears. What do you think has been the most impactful part of that messaging that's making people say, all right, just why waste my time? Why bother? Like, why are we treating this as this nuisance and not something that's essential to our liberty, our freedom, our wholeness and happiness?
So as I said earlier, that silent campaign that has been going across social media and in conversations has contributed to that. And then we're seeing the fruit of it across ages, across socioeconomic class. So when I don't see the immediate fruit, we are in a microwave generation.
Sure.
We are in Alabama where the tide wins all the time. So if we vote and we don't see an immediate response, that then feeds that silent campaign that's been going on saying that my vote really doesn't matter because the person who I wanted to win didn't win. So to me, there's been several different factors playing into that. And I'm going to say Huntsville is fortunately for the state of Alabama a pretty prosperous location. So when we are comfortable and we have our needs met plus some people don't see the need to vote. I still have my Mercedes and I'm going to Spain, and so how is it bothering me that if so-and-so is in office because I achieved all this no matter who is in office? So there's a disassociation with our liberties and how the people in office affect our day-to-day life. There's a disassociation.
I've often wondered, I've lived in this state since 1981, which is over 40 years. And I've often wondered about what you're alluding to, Angela, this sort of apathetic attitude that I've only seen, I think, grow in time. And I wonder about it, not just with, I'll say the Black community, because I think what you were just talking about is particularly relevant there, where prosperity has kind of led to a disengagement and an apathy. But even across the state, it just seems as though, regardless of race, across the state, people don't seem to have a sense of urgency about the low rankings that Alabama continues to have when it comes to social economic indicators, when it comes to health indicators. People just seem to be from the highest, and I'll just say from the governor on down, there seems to be sort of an apathy about, and a lack of urgency about what we're facing.
But at the same time, there's a lack of apathy. Well, as far as the governor is concerned, we're bringing in more industry. We have more industry types in Alabama than we've had in decades. And so the fruits of the economic diversity is showing. So the governor is in a good spot. When it comes to low at public education, well, we have a plethora of private schools, so I'm going to put my child in that private school because I can afford to do that. And those who can't afford to do that, they also feel like their vote doesn't matter because they feel like it's not enough of them or nobody cares about them because, again, that's what society has shown us. Our hearts are growing cold. We see people in need and we walk past them. Oh, they need to get a job, need to get an education, and then they can be like me. And so all of that has played into the apathy. It's not one thing. It's a multifaceted approach.
Ms. Curry, what do voters care about? Because, it's funny because when you look at some of the political commentary, the conversation that drives some of the talking points and the things that maybe CNN or MSNBC or maybe a Fox News, if you're on that side, I'm just wondering if the issues that are being discussed are the issues that people actually care about. Like, what how do you weigh in on that?
So when we look at Alabama, our latest voter turnout was 39%, which was the lowest I think in over 30 years. Lower voter turnout. When we look at the candidates and what they were talking about, and I'm just going to say for Madison County, they talked about jobs, they talked about quality of life. United Women of Color, we surveyed almost 600 people, and none of those issues were things that they talked about. They talked about things for the youth. They talked about gun violence. They talked about social issues. None of those things were addressed by any of the candidates who were running for office. So if I am a voter and I hear that, and then depending on what polling place I have to go to, and I'm going to be there 3 hours, and these people aren't even talking about what I'm talking about, I have something better to do, or I'm going to go to work. I'm not going to have to. I mean, when we talk about voting plans and the challenges that people face, the ones who want to hear the issues that that affect their day-to-day life, if they don't hear it coming from the candidate, why should they show up?
Wow.
It's just like if McDonald's was supposed to be selling Big Macs and they stopped selling them, and that's what you were going there for, eventually you're going to stop going to McDonald's.
Yeah. So that, that apathy is going to increase. So even if I see, this tyrannical tidal wave, but those that are supposed to be counter to that aren't really addressing the issues that I'm kind of living with on a day-to-day basis. I'm not going to really be driven just out of fear to stop that if you're not promoting something that's going to really impact where I am in real time.
Correct. Wow. Because we're all looking for a better way of life for the most part. And so how do these elected officials, how are they helping me to see that I can have a better way of life?
Yeah.
So there is we're in the realm of politics now in terms of this conversation. And again, I want to stress that we as an entity, this podcast, this ministry is nonpartisan. But we can't avoid the reality that politics is very partisan. And in this state, we have a Republican-controlled legislature. We have a Republican governor, and I wonder sometimes whether or not. Now I'm talking about the Black community, Angela. I wonder sometimes whether or not it would be in the best interest of the Black community to not always be a predominantly Democratic voting population. And I say that because, I don't say that because, and I want to be careful here, but I'm going to try to say this in a way that's nonpartisan. I don't believe, when I look at Pastor Snell, when I look at the Republican political agenda, I don't see much of anything as a black person for me to align with.
Yep.
However, I also understand that if I'm only expected to vote one way, then I don't give the other party any reason to compete for my vote. Now, on the other side of the coin, I also think that party has made huge, and I'm talking about the Republicans, have made huge mistakes in not trying to align themselves more with issues that are important to the black community.
110%. And that's a part of that emerging conversation that I was kind of referencing, where I'm kind of like, wow, I think, and to that same point, I don't really identify myself politically as Republican or Democrat. I'm considered independent, and I try to kind of follow the issues and kind of cast my vote in that direction. But I do think that there is a window now for the Republicans, but seems like they've made their bed to cater to a particular group whose rhetoric and values, they're as far from mine as could possibly be. So you kind of find yourself kind of buffering a little bit, trying to kind of see, all right, who's going to really address the issue? And I think that there's a lot of discontent, whereas we've tended to vote Democratic with just, all right, when opportunities have been given to make real change, seems like those opportunities have been fumbled. So on things that may matter to us, whether it's gun control or whether it's policing or whether it's kind of addressing some of those matters in a very real and tangible way, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, where do I stand? And that's a conversation I'm hearing more and more.
What a great start to our conversation with activist and civic leader Angela Curry about voting rights and civic engagement. That's part one. Part two will come on our next episode of Breathe. I'm David Person, co-host. God bless you, and don't forget, no matter how challenging life may get, you can always stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Christian Lawson and Damian Malone provide production assistance. The opening theme was produced by David Person and James Bowman. James Bowman and Kelvin Wooten produced the closing theme. Special thanks to our broadcast partner, WJOU-FM Oakwood University Radio. Episodes of Breathe can be found on your favorite podcasting platforms. Please like them and share. Until next time, when life gets difficult, don't forget to breathe.